we actually got a 5% conversion rate. Not bad. Hey everyone, today diving into a real world sales funnel, showing you the numbers behind our April and March launch of our YouTube video creator machine. And actually we didn't do as bad as I thought, especially given the fact that everyone had just found out that they were locked at home and they were potentially going to leave their jobs, making it the absolute worst time to launch a digital product and ask people to shell out 500 bucks. But you know what? What were we gonna do? Try and wait until it was over? We'd still be waiting. So we're still waiting to do a relaunch and actually start running some ads to this, but I wanted to show you how we actually wound up getting a 5% conversion rate, minus the fact that a couple of people wanted to refund. We'll get to that in a moment. So diving into my Basecamp here, you can see that I have queued up a bunch of screenshots. So you won't have me fumbling and clicking around. We're just going to go through them. And at the end, I'll go through my sales funnel architect tool and actually compare the numbers we have to what we could actually project when we start paying for traffic and not just running things to an email list. Now, jumping back over to Basecamp, let's start with the first step of our process, which was sending some segmentation emails. If you've seen any email marketing videos from this channel, you know I'm a huge proponent of segmentation. So what we did is, using MailerLite, we went ahead and sent out 3 emails over the course of a week. And essentially all these emails were designed to do was to figure out, of the 6,000 people we have on our email list, who is interested in growing a YouTube channel. So you can see these are the 3 emails that we sent out, and these are the real world open and click-through rates. So once we had this, now these emails actually went to the sales page itself. Ideally, we would have sent them to a piece of content about YouTube and then started talking about sales, but I was tired and I didn't want to make another piece of content. I just wanted to get this done. So there you go. Done is better than perfect, right? And so here is the actual segmented sequence of the 406 people who actually wound up clicking that link. So if someone didn't click the link in the segmentation sequence, they never saw any of these sales emails at all. And actually I'll get to something with the final offer email that was kind of something that I was really disappointed with, but it lets us know how to improve in the future. So you can see here that the open rates and number of emails sent went down, and that was because Jesse my business partner, went through and made sure that if someone stopped opening and clicking emails, they stopped receiving the sales emails. And this is something that when it comes to MailerLite, it's really, really hard to do. So that's why you actually see a separate sequence for every single email we sent out, because we really wanted to make sure that we weren't sending sales emails over and over again to people who were actually no longer interested. So you can see the last email, only 82 emails were sent, but we have a 50% open rate and a 20% click-through rate because we know those people are actually interested in the offer. Of course, those numbers would be a lot lower if we had kept sending to all 406 people over the course of the 7 to 10 days that this email sequence went on. So of those 406 people, we wound up getting a solid 22% click-through rate directly to the sales page, and that's going to take us to what we did on our sales page and actually dive into how little of the training webinar people actually watched. So these are metrics for the replay page and then the actual sales page itself. And these are all time. MailerLite doesn't give me the ability to segment just the time frame that we were doing this promotion. So I'm going to go ahead and X out here and go down to our sales video metrics. And these are very, very disappointing until you see how many people actually bought. So if we come in here, we can see that 20% of the people dropped off in the first 16 seconds. And then we lost up to a total of 40% within the first minute and 10 seconds. So we lose almost 50% of the people in less than 3 minutes of the video going. And this is metrics for all time. Again, when it comes to Vimeo, one of the disadvantages of using their platform is you don't get to see this type of data when you start segmenting down for specific time frames. So this is all time. On average, this doesn't represent just the 92 or 93 people who went through this process for this particular promotion. But on average, we pretty much lose more than half our people by the time 7 minutes rolls around. So we pretty much lose 60% of the people by the time the actual training of the webinar starts. So number one, this particular webinar was written using Frank Kerns' webinar blueprint, and something I think has changed is doing all of that introduction stuff. And you've probably seen a webinar where they do that silly sob story. They introduce themselves and they say, this is not for you if you're this and XYZ. I actually went through his particular formula because I'm not a professional copywriter. I'm just an amateur copywriter here. But I went through his formula and I actually cut out more than half of what he has in his original formula, so that instead of running 20 minutes before we get to the content, it actually only ran 7. So something that I'm seeing from these numbers is I need to cut it down even more. Now, I don't go through the typical story, rags to riches story in this particular one, and I don't go through 2 or 3 other sections I actually completely cut out. And so to me, this is just letting me know that people's attention spans are even shorter, although when it comes to YouTube videos, we pretty much have the same watch time. So maybe I just stink at creating hooks and open loops to keep people watching, but we'll go ahead and go through and you can see this last one we have here. We are at 20% of the people are still watching at 38 minutes in, and this is actually during the pitch. So it seems like once we get to that 7.5 minute mark, those people tend to stay through the entire training, which is good. So the drop-off rate during the training is very low, which lets me know that the information that we had in there was actually valuable. So that's very important to me. Just lets me know I need to cut more of the introduction. And so that does it for the actual sales video. Now, if you're interested in how the replay did, I'll blow it up here so you can pause the, so you can pause the video and kind of squint and see. But something to note here is I found that we can't really use this data because less than 300 or 400 people have actually gone through the replay. Right? So there's not enough occurrences here to actually make any sort of good understanding of what actually happened. So hopefully you're still with me. If you are, go and hit that like button, comment below if you have any questions. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump over to my funnel architect here and go through some of these numbers more in detail, more specifically how this would look if we started running traffic. So just a quick recap here, we sent about 6,000 emails. Of those 6,000 people, 400 were interested, and of those 400 people, and I'm doing this on average of the average click-through rate, we had 93 people actually hit the sales page. So that gives us a segmentation rate of 6.5%. That gives us a average click-through rate on our segmented sequence of 22%. And because we had a total of 5 sales, that gives us a conversion rate of 5%, which is actually way better than I thought it would be. Originally, when I looked at these numbers, I looked at the 5 sales and I looked at the 6,000 emails and I went, wow, we really stink at this, don't we? But it turns out we're not as terrible as I thought, especially considering that this was coming out at one of the worst possible times to launch a product. But hey, done is better than perfect. I just needed to get this to market. And to top it all off, we actually had one person take the upsell. Technically, we had 2 because we had someone come back later and ask for it, but they wound up being one of the refunds. So that wound up being a scratch, and we had to let go of the upsell, which I'll get to in a moment here. So something that's interesting though, that I mentioned at the very beginning when we were in Basecamp looking at the emails, that last email, that accounted for all of the sales, all of them. All the sales came from that last email. So number one, it pays to take all that painstaking extra effort. I say that even though I didn't have to do that, Jesse did, to actually segment out all of your emails and know where your sales are coming from and do all that fun tracking stuff that he had to set up. And that's part of why it took us so long to get this ready. But we know that all of the sales came from that email. Now, I'm not going to show that particular email because it's going to go against something I want to do on this channel, but I'll tell you what was in that email, because there were 2 things in that email that I think represent why all of our sales came from that. Number 1, that was the only email where we showed an income screenshot. The entire sales process is income screenshot free. Do I show numbers in terms of growth and subscribers for the channel? Absolutely. But do I talk about money and specific numbers of how much I'm making or other people are making? Not really throughout the entire process. I say not really because I do point to other channels for basic income numbers during the webinar, but I don't explicitly say, hey, I make X number of dollars, so you should totally buy my course now and make the same in the next 30 days, even though that's completely unbelievable, right? And so that was element number one. Element number two was we had scarcity in that email. We said this particular offer, this particular bundle deal is going away. Now, something that's different from our company versus others is our scarcity is real. And so we actually did have some people who emailed us later on and said, hey, I tried to buy it and it's not there anymore. And I went back through and I looked. Some of them, our system got a little messed up. Others, I had to email back and say, well, no, you saw the offer and you didn't take it. That countdown timer was real. The offer's gone. It's over, right? And so scarcity and income screenshots were the two things that wound up mattering when it came to driving all of those sales. Now, I'm a little disappointed because I would have thought that I would have been able to make some sales without having to use the income stuff, but it also shows that when you keep something like that in your back pocket for the very, very end of your sales process, it's really going to be helpful in terms of pushing people over that last yard into the end zone and finally actually making a sale. And of course, scarcity is really a really powerful tool as long as you're not misusing it. In fact, there was let me not go into that. There's a software we almost moved to, but it had a bunch of false scarcity. So really, please do not use false scarcity. It's just going to ruin your brand long term, but it can be a powerful sales technique. So now, looking at these numbers, I want to go into, okay, if we started driving traffic to this, and warm traffic, people who've seen my face, at least seen a couple YouTube videos, we're not doing cold traffic here, that's why these numbers are so freaking high, is what would it look like if we actually ran paid traffic to this funnel? Could we expect to actually see some success? So taking these numbers, you'll see the traffic projections here. On average, you want to spend 3 to 4 times whatever your product price point is in order to figure out whether or not your traffic's working. So we're going to take our $4.97 price point and multiply it by 3. Now, I'm not doing the average transaction value because we're removing the upsell, which I'll get to at the very, very end. So times 3. So at a $1,400 a month budget, we can expect to make $994 once we recoup our ad spend costs. And so this comes out of assuming that our cost per click is going to be around $3.72. Now this cost per click, which is why we had to do the cut, can go all the way up to $4.70, and we can still expect to make enough to cover our ad spend, essentially 3 sales. But as soon as we go to 471 here, you'll see, 471 here, you'll see that we're actually not going to be able to recoup our ad spend. And so this is something, of course, you want to keep in mind, that you are making at least enough to somewhat break even on your ad spend. So let's go ahead and put it back down to 4. Let's just do 470 here. Let's say we're at the absolute max. So at 470, we can expect to make 4 orders. We can expect to have 4 orders, which would cover our ad costs, which means we can continue to run traffic. And this would be our goal within the first 3 months. So we wouldn't expect to hit this target in the first month. We'd expect the first 1 to 3 months to actually be unprofitable, but at least we know, based upon what we've done with our email list, we can expect to be able to break even if we can make 4 orders on a $1,500 spend. And so that's how our product launch went. Now, one final note here about the upsell. The upsell was actually going to be a monthly mastermind where people could submit questions, and then I would hop on a call every other week or a webinar every other week and actually answer questions, although we wound up only having 2 people want that. And so obviously a mastermind of 2 people doesn't really work all that well. We definitely thought we were going to make more sales. So although these numbers look decent, they're okay, and there's something that to be improved across the board, it wasn't enough people to justify me sitting down and actually trying to continue the product, especially because we wanted to make sure that we only offered it as an upsell so that we could keep the quality of the questions higher. Something I've noticed in a lot of other masterminds, especially if it's only $37 or $50 a month, is you get a lot of beginner questions, which is nothing wrong with that, but it is not as valuable as if you have a bunch of people who are really actually serious, not those who are coming in for a month or two and then they plan on just bouncing out and extracting as much value as they can from the couple bucks that they spent on the membership. Now, the other big problem we had here was we did have 2 refunds. So it's not like this funnel actually made 2,500 bucks. It was closer to 1,500. And that was simply because number one, we had someone go through the course pretty much in a day and then ask for a refund. So whether or not they intended on actually paying us is completely up in the air. But number two, we also had someone start going through the course and they let us know that the course was too advanced, particularly when it came to some of the Excel tools that are included in it. They found that they didn't want to keep the course if the monthly membership or mastermind where they could have asked questions wasn't being continued. So because that wasn't being continued, they didn't want to keep the course because they had a bunch of questions. So obviously if we can't answer the questions, then they probably shouldn't keep the product, right? So thank you so much for watching. Sincerely hope you got some nice insights out of this, the successes and the failures. Of course, we're going to fix a bunch of stuff and then hopefully relaunch. So now it looks like it's time to make some YouTube ads. So until the next, keep building the business you love.